I'm Carole Taylor. On this edition of Journal, the role arts and culture play in our lives. My premise is that they're essential to a vibrant community. They lift us up out of our daily worries. They help form our identity. Think of New York, Broadway, Paris, galleries, Italy, opera. So why are they constantly underfunded here? Especially since they are also economic engines, providing jobs not just for the actors, singers, painters, and directors, but for the people who build the sets, write the words, the music, design the makeup and costumes. I found it incredibly ironic to see politicians proudly celebrating the work of so many Canadian artists honored at the Oscars, when government funding and support has been unreliable for years. Go Canada. One man who has worked in the arts around the world all his life is Christopher Gaze, founding artistic director of Bard on the Beach. I mean, honestly, who would have believed that anyone could inspire 88,000 people each year to sit out on a warm summer evening to listen to the words of Shakespeare? But not one day of his journey has been easy. He has had to wiggle and squirm every day to make ends meet. I love the story of his early days as a penniless actor. He could be seen hauling a bag of his meager belongings to yet another audition. But the secret was, in his battered bag was one beautiful, well-pressed tux, always ready for showtime. Make no mistake, for 37 years, Bard on the Beach, one of Canada's largest theatre companies, has only been possible because of Christopher Gaze's ingenuity. Back in a moment to get his take on culture and the arts in Canada. Christopher Gaze, an icon in our arts community. Thank you for all that you've done and are doing for the arts.
Thank you. That's sweet of you to say.
Looking around the world, because you've traveled and worked on stages internationally and stages here, if you could stand back for a second, look at arts and culture in Canada, how would you say it's doing? How would you assess it right now?
The arts has always been in crisis in terms of funding, but how is Canada doing? As well as we can, against all odds. It's so hard for arts organizations to make their case to governments and to be able to prove that they need funding, extra funding, more funding in these times to fulfill dreams and aspirations and make marvelous things happen for Canadians.
So why do you think it's so hard right now to make that case?
It always seems to have been the case that arts is never at the top of the agenda of municipal, provincial, federal governments in this country. Different nations have different formulas for funding, and we're aware of some nations that it's at the forefront. Deeply envious of those.
For instance?
I think in Europe, many of the nations, the Nordic nations and so on, they put much, much more into that. I remember Bramwell Tovey, Maestro Tovey, told me he was maestro of the Luxembourg Symphony, and he said he didn't have to do any fundraising at all. All the money was there, it was raised. They just did marvelous productions and shows and didn't have to worry about that. But that's another world. It's not Canada, and we have to fight for every penny we can get.
And so how do we stir the imagination? How can we make people feel that it matters that the arts are strong?
You have to prove yourself. You have to be good. And people have to understand a a sort of fundamental, and it could only get it through to governments. And these are hard, difficult times. For instance, that hospitals and all the social services that come with that help to save lives, but the arts make life worth living. And if people could only truly understand that, because it's all around us, Carole. People don't seem to understand, governments, and maybe citizens too, on a general level, don't seem to understand that art is all around us. We're in it right now. Everyone viewing this in their homes, they look around and they look at that lamp and the time they bought that special moment, the color they painted their walls and the car they chose or whatever, the clothes. It's all around us, creativity. And why isn't that at the forefront of our lives as we understand investment in the arts to make our lives truly glorious?
And I wonder if it is just about investment, because do we, in raising our families, do we talk about the arts? Do we read books to kids? Do we take them to the theater? I mean, it seems to me, you use the example in Europe, that it's inside families as they grow up. So it's not something new they have to discover at 20.
Yes. That is the perfect example. If parents have the ability to encourage their children to be to view, to participate in some form of the arts, it doesn't have to be the theatre. There's all the plethora of artistic engagement a child can embrace, discover, and enjoy. And a wonderful, wonderful thing for the generations that follow us if parents could just do that. Most often, the most memorable experiences of anyone that has graduated and left school were the times that I was in a play once, I was in a choir, I was in an art class with, and sometimes these are the most memorable experiences. So immerse your children in this stuff, and it doesn't mean they're all good. They certainly will not end up in the arts, everyone, but you will be touched by it and you will realize its importance and how much you want to share that, embrace it, because it's helping to inform who you are, what you love, how you love, and so on.
And it informs who you are as a city. Like, let's ask the question, does it matter for a city if it's identified with the arts or not?
I think the arts are the soul of the city. I talked to a hotelier once and I said, how is it, how do you attract people apart from running a magnificent hotel? He said, we can have the finest hotel in the city, but if there's nothing to do when people walk out the front door, we're lost. So the city must be animated. We must animate it for ourselves, for our guests from abroad, for our children. And that, as I say, it makes life worth living. A city without the arts would be a desolate place.
And so you make an effort, especially with Bard on the Beach, for those children who maybe come from families that don't have money to go to theaters or shows, to make sure that they get included in your workforce as well as in your audience.
Absolutely. And that's been a magnificent thing we have been able to do at Bard. A lot of people have, when people step up and want to support the arts in general, in my case it's the theatre, very often they want to support because they want to support education, children, those next generations. And so we can do an awful lot in encouraging children to come, because we can very often do it for nothing, because we've been paid and helped by individuals or organizations to do just that one thing. And the hard part that's happening right now, because of cost of living, inflation, expenses, everything's costs more, it's harder for us to be able to afford to, even after we've been supported, to be able to get, I say Bard is one thing, but everybody else is doing more in education because the schools aren't doing so much art now. So not-for-profits and charities like ours are doing more, but they're struggling because they're not getting more from government to fill that gap.
So costs are going up, and I assume revenue's going down?
Revenue's going down because the recovery from the pandemic, well, you and I recovered, but the audiences, for diverse reasons, since 2019, Bard's last season, have fallen off 20%. That's quite a lot. I mean, to us, in ticket revenue, that's at least $1 million. And so we have to fill that gap. And that's a very big gap to fill by all sorts of different means we can. Now, why has it fallen off? A number of reasons, but I think the expense of life is certainly one thing, but also the whole getting used to watching TV and film at home.
And all of the streaming, of course. We'll continue this discussion about really what the state of the arts are in our city, our province. Back in a moment. I suppose there are some people who think, oh, well, you're in the arts, you're subsidized, everything's easy street. So let's look at Bard on the Beach as an example. Mm-hmm. How you talked about the gap between audiences dropping, revenue dropping, and what does the company do to adjust? So how is your time spent?
Well, my time, I'm the artistic director of the company, and I have been for 37 years. But as I age, of course, there's support under me artistically and around me so that the company is very, very well managed that way. But I would think that I spend 70% of my time raising money.
And so when you say raising money, how important in your budget is the government funding?
It's important, but in a $10 million budget, it's 4% of it. 4%.
I think that would shock people, that the only government grants that you're getting are about 4%.
4%. That's right. The province of British Columbia gives us $20,000 a year. 20,000. That's like if you cooked a fantastic meal and I was willing to pay for 2 or 3 of us to have a lovely dinner, $260, it's like me saying, thank you very much. And if I could still find a penny, I'd leave it there, and you'd be insulted.
So it's tough. So
Yeah.
where do you go besides government to get money?
Corporately, and that's really tough these days. All that has shifted. Foundations, yes, of course. Individual family foundations, yes. Seek them out. And then there's many people that just give, and thank you, but chiefly because I've just been around a long time and I know a lot of people, I go to individuals who I know can help us, and very often they do at high level amounts of money.
And so you're scrimping and saving and pushing and shoving and trying to keep the theater alive?
That's right, and the saving wherever we can. I mean, Carole, in our smaller theatre, for instance, we used to have 12 actors, maybe 14 on that stage for various productions, whatever we wanted to produce, affordably and as well as we could. Now we have 3, 4, possibly 5 maximum. And that's because we can't afford it anymore. That's where we save money. And it's good. It forces creativity on our part, and we've done great work. But it's a shame not to be able to do what we could do.
And of course, the economic effect of the arts gets overlooked. I don't know if you've got numbers in your head about how it affects the economy of either Canada or BC, but like every job, every retailer that you pull in, or someone selling food at the... Do you know what the numbers are like for what you give back to the community?
Like the economic impact? It has to be 20 million bottom line. You think of, if you just go down the line of what goes into this, what we pay people, what you pay to come, what you pay at the restaurant and the parking lot, and the babysitter and the dog sitter and on and on and on, people's taxes individually, that we're employing over 300 people. We have 350 volunteers volunteer at the time. They still have to park their car and get to the theatre, and so on and so on and so on. The economic impact just on the Bard level is pretty significant. Vancouver without Bard would be a modern tragedy.
Yes. We don't want any more Shakespearean tragedies.
Exactly.
So for theaters across the country, I keep hearing stories about everybody struggling, and too many of them are just giving up and walking away from it. And do you hear those stories when you're talking to your fellow artists?
Yeah, of course we hear of smaller. We're quite a big theatre company. We've become one of the biggest theatre companies in the country. But there's so many of the smaller companies who don't have the reach that we have, the uniqueness of Bard, an audience of what used to be 100,000, now is 80,000, but nevertheless, that's a lot of people. Smaller theatre companies who can only afford smaller runs, shorter runs and so on, they've reduced down to maybe one show a year, or they just go out of business, or they just do workshops. So the city's losing all the time. And you see it in our city with things like the fireworks, which was a great, even if you didn't like fireworks, you enjoy the fact that the city was able to afford for everyone to have a unique and special party, free, gratis, and for nothing, 3 or 4 times a year, and now that's gone.
You know, when I was chair of the Board of Trade a couple of years ago, but that's when we started Spirit of Vancouver. And I don't know if you recall it, but we just felt we were losing everything. You know, the fireworks were about to go. We'd lost the racing. We'd lost Greek days. You know, it just seemed everything was shriveling up and going away. And so Spirit of Vancouver, we started to say, who do we want to be? Let's show the world and let's get out there. And symphony was in trouble, and then the opera was in trouble. And so then I think we got a little bit comfortable being okay, but I can see some really bad warning signs right now.
Yes, this is potentially a very bleak time. And I actually think if people, if government could actually just turn that right now and say, we are going down a bad road, let's invest in the arts, because that will animate people's imagination, the excitement of the city, people wanting to be here, have a good time. We've got FIFA, we've got the World Cup coming, like it or not. I like it, but not everybody does, but I like it. And we're hoping that might do a lot for the city. It is a massive investment on one end, but we need much more than that. That's a thing that's put on us. We need to be able to invent these things, and people need to be able to have the resources and the ability to be able to put these things on without governments, if you like, legislation and getting in the way. It's a hard thing to do. I mean, it's a hard thing to do for Bard to produce in Vanier Park in Sonark, to be able to put up those steel frames, to be able to put up those tents. Costs $2 million. And then we have to store all that stuff for the rest of the year. Costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if the city, the province could help ameliorate those costs, not necessarily pay for them, but find ways that we could soften those and help, that would help us. But that we're just one amongst many. Invest in the arts, and we invest in the city, and we invest in prosperity and happiness and gaiety.
If there were one policy that you would want government to change, what would that be?
Just to take the arts as one of the cornerstones of the city, along with the others, which are so desperately important, but make the arts as important. And I think that could help to transform Vancouver back into what we could be as a resort city. We know we have that, but a city that people love to come to because there's so much to do there. It's just so different and so thrilling to be in Vancouver.
Well, thank you for keeping this all alive and in the forefront of our imagination. Good luck this season. Everyone still has a chance to buy season's tickets. Christopher Gaze. We'll be back in a moment. Christopher Gaze's new book, Road to the Bard, is a raucous, sometimes sad tale of one talented young actor just trying to make a go of it on the stage. His personal tale ends up being the story of the arts and artists of Canada. It's an important read, something to think about. Let me know your thoughts on YouTube. Till next time, I'm Carole Taylor.